Beechfield, Minnesota. Hopefully we are all very familiar with this small town. To the almost 7,000 people who live here or who live in this town, agriculture is crucial to the economy. I bet many of your parents, grandparents, family members, or even yourselves work in a field that directly or indirectly affects or supports agriculture. Now imagine that the Minnesota state government decided that all towns had to focus on real estate, and they dubbed agriculture as unimportant. This would help a few people in Litchfield, but for the most part it would only hurt us. All the funding would be stripped away from agriculture, and farmers would attempt and be forced to produce food for many while not having the money to do so. In my persuasive speech, I will explain how this scenario relates to conservation, why I chose this topic, types of conservation, the why to conservation, the how, and recommendations, and finally my conclusion. This animal on screen probably looks familiar to you all, but here's a quick recap for anyone who forgot. The Amur leopard is a big cat which inhabits the forests of Russia and China. You may be wondering why this is relevant to conservation. In the article, Climate Change Puts Amur Leopard at Risk by Exley and his colleagues describe how many activities are a large contributor to extinction. This made me want to understand what I could do to help, because I think we can all agree extinction is not ideal. And if human activities caused it, there must be a way to stop it. While doing research, I came across the two main forms of conservation, central and local. Central conservation is over an entire country or state. And in the article, budget cuts to US EPA will reduce government data on pollutants and increase reliance on industry data by Jennifer Sass and May Wu. They describe how America's main agency for protecting the environment, the Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, is dealing with major budget cuts while still being expected to provide accurate data. This is an issue because the data they collect is very important, and if they don't have the funds to get the data, they end up collecting from small samples, which means that they get inaccurate data. On the other hand, we have local conservation, which is in smaller communities or towns. In the article, Local Government and Nature Conservation in Norway by Eva Irene Follett and Sissel Hovick, they discuss the use of decentralization for environmental policies. Centralization is when the power and decisions are made under a single authority. Follett and Hovick state that local and central governments don't share the same objectives. When it comes to environmental policies, which becomes an issue when central government enforces laws that therefore dictate and control what the local governments have to follow. One main thing to understand with local conservation is that people in these smaller sectioned communities see the land and overall state of such an ecosystem as cultural. Overall, every one of these areas has a specific need for the land and resources they have. Now that you understand the difference between local and central conservation and why they need to get along and coincide, I can explain exactly how we can conserve and why others choose to or not to. In the article, Classifying Conservation Targets Based on the Origin of Motivation, Implications over the Success of Community-Based Conservation Projects, Biodiversity and Conservation by Tamia Soto and her team, the reasons that people conserve is described. Soto states that there are a few reasons which include making money, so that could be from tourism or certain crops that plants give us. Second would be preserving cultural traditions, and the third would be concern for the overall well-being of the earth and ecosystems.
So I got to figure out what the tree is for, or what is for pruning out there.
The reason it is important to know these reasons is because they are actually helpful to conservationists when they attempt to create laws in certain areas. At the beginning of my speech was a perfect example of this, but I will just give you another. When focusing on these three reasons that are given in the article, I can create a perfect scenario. Let's say people in Hutchinson hold significance to birch trees. In in town, that would be a good marketing strategy towards getting them to keep them. But for people in Litchfield, that would not. Let's say people in Litchfield are economic based and care about the money coming in from Hutchinson residents visiting Litchfield to see our birch trees. That would make a much more ideal strategy. And that notes why it's important to understand the why. Now that you know the why, we can determine how. On my Google form I sent you all, I asked you ways you think you could conserve right now. Things like using reusable water bottles and even not hunting were brought up, which are all great ways to conserve. But a big majority of you said not littering or recycling, so I did more research. In the article, Determinants of Littering and Experimental Analysis by Fatima Khawaja and Anar Shah, the careless and improper disposal of small quantities of waste is defined as littering. Keep America Beautiful shows that improper litter disposal poses a threat to human, animal, and plant life, but also man's economic prosperity. Littering is also one of the main causes of transmission of diseases, makes the environment overall unpleasant, causes vehicle accidents, and put children and other people at risk of cuts, infections, illness in public places. People litter because they are simply too lazy, or they claim everyone else does, which can be the monkey see, monkey do effect. So don't be lazy and be better than people who litter. Instead, you should recycle. In the article, Private Recycling Values, Social Norms, and Legal Rules by W. Kip Viscusi and his team, social norms are described. Reinforcing positive social norms which promote ideal behaviors surrounding conservation is a good strategy. There are two costs if you choose not to recycle. The first one being adverse reactions in policy, which could be a fee or a ticket that you can get for not doing so. And the second would be neighbors or others' reactions. My recommendation is to not litter. Recycle when you can, and vote against policies locally if and when you can. I hope in my persuasive speech I persuaded you all to do so to keep our planet safe and healthy. I also hope you see the importance of local and central governments getting along. Thank you for listening.